So, Brooke DeRosa, welcome to Becca's Book Talks. And how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? It's nice to see you.
Yeah, good. I'm doing good for the moment. I don't want to bring up too much of my personal life, but we went through a family tragedy at the earlier this month, so we were still kind of reeling from that. But
Oh, I'm sorry to
getting
hear that.
getting to do this brings me joy. So, for those of you that are new to the channel, hello, welcome. My name is Becca B. I go by Becca B on the Book Dragon, and I have with me a very special guest that I've known from our performance in the Mikado together. This is Brooke DeRosa. She is a composer, vocalist, conductor, and last I checked, filmmaker. Right?
Yeah,
So
technically, yeah.
yeah. So how are you doing since the fires? That was just unbelievable.
I mean, honestly, pretty good. I guess I just have a way of looking at it where, it happened. There's nothing I can do about it. And the only thing I can really do is move on. So just trying to replace some of the things I had that I lost and miss and not worrying so much about the things that I don't miss. Okay, we're just
Well,
we're working with an architect to rebuild it. So yeah.
did you get a chance to go over the questionnaire?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we start? Why don't we start with
I,
the
I don't know
with
if
the
I have 10 books though, to be
that's fine if
honest.
you don't have 10 total. I had people that say five. I had people that had more than 30 books listed, which is fine. So the more you talk, the better. So
Okay.
so like if you could, what would be the top 10 books that have influenced your life and your profession, whether it be a personal narrative or stories that have left a lasting impression on you and why?
Well, for me, since I'm in music, I feel like a lot of the things that influence me are actually shows or movies. I don't know if you want me to talk about those, but for books,
Why not?
well, okay. I think that would probably be easier. Although I do read a lot. I don't know if there's any one book I can point to and say, oh, this influenced me, because I think I'm more like a listening visual person. But I think the
That's
first
totally
thing,
fine. Yeah.
okay, well, the thing that influenced me the most to want to do kind of everything theater was the Phantom of the Opera. I feel like that's everybody's gateway thing,
I
though.
think
I
so.
don't know if you're around in the 80s or the 90s. So definitely the Phantom of the Opera that got me. I knew whatever that was, I wanted to do that. And I had the same experience when my dad kind of fought against my mom, and they decided that they were going to let me watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I had to cover my eyes for the scary parts.
Really?
And that when I saw that, I just was blown away. I thought, this is amazing, and I want to do this. And so, oh yeah, I think those are two really important things to me. I mean, I can keep going down a list, but I don't know if you want me to talk about them after I mention them, or
Why
whether.
not?
Feel free to,
What was
hop in.
intriguing to you? That's interesting. I think you're the first person on my channel to mention Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just curious. What drew you to that?
I just thought it was like it's like a kind of the perfect movie. It just was paced so well, and there was so many. Even as a kid, there was so much imagination that had been put in it. And I had been kind of obsessed with history. I was really into ancient Egypt as a kid, and so it kind of fed on that a little bit. And yeah, I mean, just with the honestly, John Williams' score is what really makes so many of those early Spielberg movies, I think, in the category that they're in. Um, so obviously the music was a large part of it. But yeah, I mean, it has everything. It's adventurous, it's funny, there's a romantic angle, and the good guy wins. So what's not to love?
Very cool. If you were to mention at least maybe like a few books that were inspiring to you as a kid
Hmm.
that never left you, that are still like your all-time favorites that you can turn to.
It's going
If you
back a while. I remember I really liked The Catcher in the Rye. I really liked Shakespeare. I really loved reading Tennessee Williams. Um, I loved uh, like the Tolkien books. I liked The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Stuff like uh, Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim.
Oh my gosh.
Um, Stuff like I there and then but then in high school I really liked War and Peace. I really liked All Quiet on the Western Front. I really liked um Kon-Tiki. Anything that was adventure, kind of.
Kontiki, why does that sound familiar?
Thor Heyerdahl. It's really good.
Theodore Hire Theodore
Thor. It
Heyerdahl?
no, Thor. His name is
Or
Thor.
Hire-
It's about it. Well, yeah, I won't spoil it
It
for you, but
sounds it sounds familiar. I'm gonna have
it's
to go
about
look
the
that.
guy on the raft. That's all I'll say. It's really good.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
have a few
adventure.
stories about guys on rafts, including Eric, but I'm not sure if I don't think I read Kontiki, and I definitely have not read War and Peace. This was for you in high school?
Yeah, I think
Wow.
so. And it's funny because I feel weird saying War and Peace, but I really liked it, actually. It was a fast read for me because I really liked it.
Really a fast read at the
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Huh.
Of course, I read The Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I really liked those, and I think like there when I also read like Where the Red Fern Grows, and I
Mm.
actually named my dogs after the dogs in that book, and then I liked scary books too. I liked like the kids' scary books like Wait Till Helen Comes. I liked the R.L. Stine books. I liked some of the Christopher Pike ones that weren't so weird. And then I got into kind of like a gothic horror thing where I really enjoyed Dracula and it's not horror, but Great Expectations, and I really liked Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and um, Dorian Gray, a picture of Dorian Gray. Yeah,
Which
I had kind of these like eras, I think.
because that's interesting. That was actually a question I want to ask you later about because I was looking on your site at some of the scores that you've done for either film or stage, and you have adapted
Hmm.
works of Dorian Gray. You did The
Hmm.
Monkey's Paw, Alice
Hmm.
in Wonderland, and now this
Hmm.
latest one we have, and of course I don't have it with me. It's in the other room. The Yellow Wallpaper, which
Hmm.
and that was so, but that's interesting. That you mentioned that you got into scary stuff like the Arlstein Goosebumps and all that.
Hmm.
You didn't happen to read just out of curiosity. Did you read about the story with about this girl named Jenny with the green bow?
Yes, that scared the crap out of me. With her head falling off, took off the ribbon. Yeah, I actually
Yes.
reread that quite a few times. Because it was very scary. Um, in general, I like stuff that can plausibly happen more than the thing where people are going into parallel worlds or except for Narnia, of course. But yeah, I think stuff that could in fact, I'm reading a whole bunch of like I would say thrillery books now, and like the ones that really turn me off are where they go into a portal, which is a like a mirrored world, which is just I'm just like, oh God, no, just something that could actually happen, please. So
That's awesome. So of those more than 10 that you mentioned already, which one of those books would you recommend for today's readers, especially now with, the whole thing going on with the band stuff? I'm not sure if any of the ones that you've read are currently on the banned list, which we'll get to that question
I
later,
don't
but
think so.
which of those do you think is a good text for our current students to read today?
Well, I guess relevant to what women are dealing with would be Yellow Wallpaper. I know that's why Diana Farrell wanted to write a libretto about it, because there's parallels. Um, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend one book over another. And I have to be honest, I don't know how well they all are aging. I haven't reread them in quite a long time. It was a different time back then, so I'd have to go back and
Know
see
that
before recommending anything.
Yeah, I know that a great, usually like in high school, of the books that you mentioned,
Catcher in the Rye was banned, wasn't it? No.
Shakespeare's always mentions Tennessee Williams sometimes. Great Expectations, I know is like that's like a what do they call that? Like a core text for most seniors.
Hmm.
So, but I didn't know if there was anything in a
Oh, To
particular
Kill a
like
Mockingbird. I mean, yeah. A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff that I read as a kid. Sweet Valley Twins.
Oh my God.
I like the one where she got like somehow was it a plane crash and she and that guy ended up on the island and her sister was
Oh
looking
my
for
gosh.
her.
It's been years since I read the Sweet Valley Twins. The one that I
Yeah.
clearly remember was the one about Nora, the whole Halloween spiel.
Oh, why does that ring a bell?
The new,
I don't know.
she's like the new girl in school, dark hair, white skin, and everyone is sort of like questioning, is she real? Is she a ghost? Is she a spook? And she's just new, but there's like a whole, it's almost like a horror thing going on. I'm not sure if you recall that one.
Mm-mm.
That was like out of that was my favorite of the series.
Mm. Oh, The Velvet Room too.
The Velvet Room.
Zilpha Keatley Snyder. That was a good one. I don't know if that aged well though. I have to think about it. Yeah, it's been a while. And then I have like a lot of books I like now, so I don't know. But yeah,
So what was the so like what was the last story that you read, and what were your takeaways from it
the last book I read
so far?
of that list or of
Just
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 anything.
currently.
Well, I do an annual rereading of one of my new favorite books, which is called Song of Spider-Man, which is by Glenn Berger or Berger. I'm not sure. I think he says Berger. I actually wrote to him on Twitter because I lost my copy in the fire and he's going to send me an autographed one. So that's actually about the
Nice.
making
Wow.
of the musical Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. And
Oh, okay.
it was recommended to my husband by a friend of his, a director colleague, and then he recommended it to me. And man, that is a ride. That's a really for anybody that enjoys Schadenfreude and or musical theater, I would really, really, really recommend that book. It's pretty great to see that whole thing unravel.
So it's called Song of
Song
Spider-Man.
of Spider-Man. Yep.
Wow. Wow, nice. Nice. So are you currently, I mean, right now I just read, and I'm not sure this is something that you're going to be working on as of tomorrow, but the last thing I read on your site was that you got correct me if I'm wrong, you got some kind of a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts from eBell to write
Mhm.
as, what was it, something the Rose or about the Rose?
Um, no, it was renamed to We Can Do It. It's a Rosie the Riveter musical. That was an original story though, so it's not a book.
Okay. So what is the current, are you doing any kind of reading challenge right now, or in your case, a musical challenge that you're challenging yourself constantly to write new music for?
No, I'm actually doing a lot of film scores right now, so I haven't really had time to just kind of sit and concentrate. But I actually had thought a lot of my work was lost in the fire. Some of it maybe, but I was able to recover my Treasure Island stuff, my Marie Antoinette stuff. So and some of the Dorian Gray stuff. So I'm looking forward to maybe getting back writing on those. I also have a story about Amelia Earhart that I really, really have to start writing.
So, because I was looking at your site and I didn't know if those were projects that you were currently working on or they're in the works. Because only a few of them I was able to click on, and that was a link to another site, like Alice in
Yeah,
Wonderland, for instance.
right, right, right. Yeah, I don't have all the sites yet. It gets to be incredibly expensive when they all renew at the same time, and you're kind of like, ugh. But yeah, everything's kind of in progress except for the ones that you know, which are finished. So I just kind of rotate around on things, or sometimes I get a good idea for a song, and I think, oh, it doesn't really fit in this, but it might be great in this, or kind of what have you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So as a reader, and that you do adapt a lot of the, so far from what I've read, the classics.
Hmm.
What do you believe is the biggest obstacle that we are facing today in the wake of these current bannings of the books from last year? And what do you think that does for today's teachers and students, the libraries, and the bookstore clientele itself? What do you think
Well,
is the real obstacle?
to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what books are banned. In general, I don't really think things should be censored at all because I think it's kind of a slippery slope. It's always going to change what people feel is inappropriate or not inappropriate. Like it's such a vague thing. Just like I don't think art should be censored or theater should be censored. And even though it's something I might not enjoy or want to go see, I don't think that people should not be allowed to do what they're going to do. So that's kind of, I don't know, generally how I
So,
feel.
so like as a musical theater goer, there's been a lot of debate about Spring Awakening, which was a play
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
made into a musical. They had to put that scene at the end of. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not.
I have seen like half of a bootleg.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure if you recall the ending of Act One, where Venla and heck is the guy's name, Melchior, are in the hayloft and they're having their first round of intercourse. But the
Right.
fact that they had to, I don't know why, and it may have been done differently, like in the beginning, but they have basically the intercourse scene. But the way that it's done was like, did they have to show all of that? Because I'm not sure, like some people were like, that is not appropriate for certain audiences. And even I was surprised that my school, alma mater, actually put that on when I was subbing. One of my students said that she actually went to go see it. And she's like in her early teens. I was like, really? You were allowed to go see that? And she says, yeah. I'm just not sure what your take would be
Um,
on that.
and I think that was the one where they had some nudity, right? I think she's topless or something in
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
I, I think with more like a producer hat, I think than anything, I personally wouldn't put something on that would alienate that large of a swath of people because it relates directly to ticket sales. Um, my only thing is I feel like sometimes like at least in movies when you have a love scene you can kind of you can limit the what you're showing and the angles and it can be very artistic and done for a real specific purpose. I think in musical
Yes.
theater it can be a little more clunky because
Hmm.
you can't just cut to different
Yeah,
angles and things. So you
absolutely.
could be going, wow, this is going on for a really long time. Um, and it could end up being comical instead of serious. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And in general, for me personally, I have always felt that when you have to have something that's just shocking for shocking's sake, that there's probably an issue with it not being compelling enough on its
Hmm.
own. That's just my feeling. But I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I would just be, I would probably laugh. I don't know. Maybe.
So going back to the books, was there ever a book or a story narrative that was so hard for you to get through if you finished it at all, either because of the subject matter or the content? Like if it was ever hard for you to read through. I know you mentioned Jenny with the green bow, but
Because I kind of like have a horrific fascination for that kind of stuff. I really like stuff like The Wicker Man. I think the only stuff I really don't love is if there's like a lot of torture that's described in great detail or that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of like, bleh. I mean, everyone has like sentences they wish they hadn't read, you know?
yes, yes.
You go,
Either even
why? I just didn't need that visual in my head haunting me.
yeah, yeah, or even if it's like the last sentence, like for instance, I'm not sure if you ever read The Good Earth
Mm-mm.
by Pearl S. Buck. I'm not even sure
Oh, maybe I did.
that may have been turned into an opera. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know the Bone Setter's Daughter was made into an opera, but I don't know about The Good Earth.
The Bone Setters? Oh, yeah. Well, no, there's that scene in what is it? Man Bovary? Right? Because he's working on the guy's ankle.
I never.
Yeah, it's gross. I just don't
Yeah,
I don't like gross stuff. I don't like stuff where people are being tortured or I don't know. I just and not either like I don't like Saw and that kind of stuff. I hate that
oh,
stuff.
Yeah, gotcha.
Anything that's like that and books and kind of go, "Ah."
Yeah. So of your entire book collection, I'm not sure if you lost a lot of books in the
I don't have
fire.
any books anymore.
Oh, geez. Well, from your collection that you had, which is, I mean, because you wrote, you talked about Song of Spider-Man.
Mhm.
Which of the ones that you can recall would you definitely could not live without if you were to have your collection again?
I'd like to have my Sherlock Holmes books back. I like to have stuff like I had just random horror books like Woman in Black and Ghost Story, and I had a Edgar Allan Poe thing. I had probably the horror book. I did have a Mrs. Frisbee and the Rest of It my mom gave me, and a really nice illustrated Alice in Wonderland, which was also gone, which I would have really liked to have those too. And I mean, yeah, Song of Spider-Man, but you can buy that at Amazon. Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, I did have a really cool ballet book that was all illustrated, which was really great. And I had a couple of books about like light opera, and of
Mhm.
course all of my scores, which are technically books. But I have most of those back now, so that's good.
That's good. That's good. So, are there currently any organizations, charities, or special events that are taking place that our viewers should currently know about that you would want us to participate in or that you would want us to um, investigate or donate to or look into, research?
I wish there was, but nothing right now.
Yeah. Because I know that you work, because currently, right now, you were, correct me if I'm wrong, you were living in Malibu at the time, and now you're where? In Long
Mhm.
Beach?
Actually, we're in Beverly Hills. We have a little tiny house. It's
Okay.
nice.
And
We found a yard. We have a dog. That's the whole thing. Nobody wants a big dog, so yeah.
okay. So because you're basically now a I don't like I don't I wish I think they need to come up with a different term besides a triple threat. I don't like that term, but you are a quadruple talent between vocals and composing, conducting, and filmmaking since the pandemic. Which of those take the more which one takes up more time? Which one is more complex? Which are the ones that you can easily do versus ones that are the hardest, but you love doing them anyway?
Composing's the hardest and it requires the most time and energy.
Time and energy. I couldn't think of it. Thank you.
Just because I think in some cases, if it's completely original, you're essentially building a world and it just takes, you have to kind of, I mean, I'm always daydreaming, so you have to kind of just think about it and think about that place and try to visualize that and what kind of songs the characters sing or what kind of, what's the weather like there? What's the this there? It's just, at least for me, I think performing now I have it pretty dialed in. I used to get nervous when I was younger, but not really now because all this other stuff is so much more intense that it's kind of like if I crack on a note, I crack on a note. I mean, everybody knows this is live theater, and so that's the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think composing is the most important to me, but I like doing all the other ones, but I think that's one of the ones where you can really um, create something new that people haven't maybe heard or seen before, and that's why that's more important to me.
So composing, you're saying, is another type of world building, like you're building a story with music.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. What are your current degrees in right now, and where were you educated from?
All I have is a BA and from Washington Lee University. They did not offer a combined major because they're a really small school. But I have a double major in theater and music. So I did a theater program separate from a music program. Um, so yeah, and I thought about going back to school, but by the time I did, I sort of had just learned everything from doing it,
Yeah.
and it just seemed kind of counterproductive to. And also, I couldn't afford to go back. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially now with the with the inflation right now. Who my question is, and of course with everything with the colleges now because of all the protests, it's like Does anyone want to go to college nowadays because of what's going on? So, um, let me see. Do you still prefer doing both vocal and composing whenever asked, or like if you're commissioned?
Do I prefer doing which or?
Do you still prefer doing both vocal and composing? Or did you
Oh
ever
yeah,
find
I
yourself
like
doing,
or what?
or did you ever find yourself doing both at the same time?
Oh yeah, I've been in my own shows. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a lot, especially because I'm usually putting them on myself too, but I have done that.
So from the books to the stage, so I wrote a few of them down from the site. You had I forgot who the composer, I'm sorry, not the composer, the author, the Monkey's Paw,
W. Jacobs.
Jacobs. Okay. Dorian Gray, of course. You did one called Red after Red Riding Hood.
Hmm.
And I had no idea that you're doing, is it for the whole series? A series of unfortunate events? Is it for the entire series on Netflix?
No, I sang on that. I sang on
Oh,
that
oh, you
on
sang on
Netflix. Yeah.
Okay. And there's of course the yellow wallpaper. So
Hmm.
when it comes to that, my question is, do you read the books first to kind of get an idea of where to hear the musical muse within yourself? And then how does that transpose from the book to the music? What are the thoughts that are going through your head? And at that point, are you already working with the lyricist, or do you start off independently?
It really depends on the project. So for some, I write the words on the music and I just kind of do it organically together. Um, and it's usually I have a pretty good deal of familiarity with the source material.
Mhm.
If I'm working with a lyricist, sometimes it's music first and they're putting in lyrics. Sometimes it's lyrics first. With opera, it's generally you get the libretto. And that kind of I don't know. I think because I have a performing background, I try to think about what it's going to look like, and that kind of lets me know what it should sound like. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. So as an example, because your last project was the yellow wallpaper,
Hmm.
there's a lot. I was very surprised
Hmm.
as to the psychological effect that it was having on this woman. At first, it didn't seem like the woman's husband was keeping her hold up in there. It seems like they rented the house for what, 2 to 3 months, and it
Hmm.
was still being built, but the yellow wallpaper either had not been finished or it wasn't stripped down, and that the wallpaper itself starts to take on a female shape. Um, and to the readers, even when I was reading it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Is it her? Is it the narrator who is suddenly finding that parallel mirror-like image of herself within the wallpaper? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of up in the air. I guess it's up to everybody to sort of interpret it for themselves how what they think is happening, and I think that's kind of what we did too. But we had the wallpaper, if you will, sing back in ours, um, as
So
one
kind
of
of,
the other characters, and kind of, but it was kind of ambiguous whether or not it was that character or if it was something else.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think that's what's so cool about the story because also no one's really sure what happens at the end.
yeah, the sudden, yeah, what is it? The husband suddenly
She says,
suddenly
now I creep
faints.
over him every time. So yeah, we
Yeah, it's
there,
almost like I couldn't tell if the husband suddenly became the prisoner by the end. I think that's, like you said, left up to the interpreter.
yeah, it's kind of I think that's kind of why it's a cool story because it doesn't really make a lot of those choices definite, and you're sort of going, what is going on here in this? And but yeah, I think it's pretty effective for like someone that's losing their mind. I think it reads that way, and maybe that's why she can kind of get away with some of those open-ended things.
Mhm. So because and I had asked you a question sometime earlier about the fact that the story is now in the public domain. when it for today's, and this is for everyone else out there who is into composing or is into music, what when it comes to public domains versus those that are still under copyright, what are like some steps that you have to do that you went through approaching this project in particular?
For public domain, you don't need to do any steps. That's why I only do public domain. If you were to get something that was still under copyright, you'd have to option it. You'd have to just approach whoever is holding the rights and say, I want to do this, and they would have to approve it, and you would have to pay them. And
Okay, let's try that again. I missed
oh,
the last part. You were talking about something that they would have to option it and what?
Yeah, they'd have to option it, and they would have to pay the rights holders money to have the right to develop it into a show. And then there would be kind of like milestones they would have to meet. And then, obviously when it goes on stage, the people would be recouping a percentage because it's their idea and everything. And yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to trying to think of what I had down here. When it comes to commissions, whether someone approaches you with a commission to write something, or whether you and let's say the lyricist, which could either be you or someone else, when
Hmm.
you ask for when you write for a commission for like a grant or something, does the how does what is like the breakdown developing the idea to the finished project?
What do you mean?
So like I was like I said, I was reading your about the online thing with eBell about Rosie the Riveter,
Uh-huh.
you know that. So when you get so do you often get commissions from LA Opera or from other organizations or companies to write either the stage score or the film score? And do who develops the idea first? And do you often find that yourself are writing for um, that you're asking for to write music for commissions?
Um, I mean, film is really different from musicals and operas, so I'll separate that out. But how it works is usually the entity will approach me and a librettist or lyricist or something like that, and or we have an idea for a show and we bring it to an entity, and then they essentially pay us to write it. We own it. They have an exclusive right for a number of years, and they usually have the right to bring back the show kind of whenever they want, within reason, and then we get paid for that also.
Mhm.
But it's pretty straightforward. It's a good deal. In film music, actually, it's not a commission. You're essentially doing a work for hire where you own the rights to the music, but it's sort of your name is on it, but you're essentially kind of selling it to the production company, and you split it kind of 50-50 in terms of royalties. So
Okay, okay. For today's composers, what are like the ideal? I'm sure there's a bunch, but what are the ideal musical software that is essential for uh, future composers that you have worked with and that you and that or ones that you particularly like and that you would recommend?
um well, I personally work in Sibelius, which is a notation software, which is a great way to make sheet music and stuff like that. I also work in Logic because I'm on a Mac. That would be if you need more sampled sounds and things that are going to maybe have a little more electronic kind of edge. Um, you can do sheet music in Logic. You can do electronic things in Sibelius, but I kind of do a different approach, knowing where each show is going and what world it lives in, I think.
Mhm.
So I would recommend some kind of like DAW, Logic or Cubase or anything like that. And I know Sibelius, there's also Dorico, there was Finale, which is getting phased out, but yeah, so some kind
Are
of
each of those
notation.
are each of those programs like, oh, I don't have the, can't think of the name of it, because I had Garriton, which I guess is like a library of all the different musical instruments. Do those programs specifically have the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, they have a proprietary thing. You can get much better proprietary things from other companies and have them work with that as kind of what would you say? The main working thing that you're using. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, yeah. So, your first, let me just go back. So your first opera was The Monkey's Paw.
Mhm.
Usually, and I'm not sure if you have, if you were under apprentice with someone to create this a particular opera, but how long did it take you to go from the idea to the finished project? Usually, like on a give or take, like how long does it normally take to create an opera like
Well, I came up with the idea for the monkey's paw in 2013. I shelved it after working on it for maybe, I don't know, a week or something like that. I ended up playing it in our house, and my husband said, "What is that? That's really good." And I said, "Oh, it's this opera I never finished." He said, "You should finish it." And then it took me about 2 weeks to write it, I guess.
that? Because
But
I love the music from, because I saw that reel of Alice in Wonderland. That looked so much fun. That looked so much fun. I loved everything
that
with
was fun.
that whole concept with like the, what was it,
The LED wall with the
yes,
animation. Yeah,
yes, that was that. I'm still questioning how they made her big. Just,
I did it. I
wait,
directed
what?
it.
What do you mean you did it?
They
Like,
made her get big and small. I did it. I directed it. I told them how to do it.
it's just, I think, well, when I so would that have been like a type of filmmaking experience for you to create like a crossover effect with that for Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, I think the thing about Alice in Wonderland is it's got to be wonderful, right?
Mhm.
And I knew that there existed LED walls, and I thought that that would be a good way to save money on scenery. And
Agree.
also, I don't like when go and I see things and they don't really have any kind of production value. I like to be kind of like immersed. That's what I loved so much about Phantom. There's a lot of spectacle. It's
Yes.
got, fire, it's got pyro, it's got things falling, it's got sets that go like this and lakes that come out of nowhere. It's cool, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think when I do stuff, I always want it to like look a certain way and be a certain way. So I thought, the story of Alice in Wonderland has a lot of challenges, like how do you make her grow big and grow small? How do you do how do you make her go down a rabbit hole? So I kind of thought pretty early on it's gonna have to be something that's a little bit bigger scale than I'm used to, and it's gonna have to have some kind of uh magic stuff kind of going on.
What about for the yellow wallpaper? Well, because I wasn't sure if that was just a concert version or if that was a
Yes.
full scale.
It was just a concert version at Carnegie Hall. They don't really like you to do stage. They really want to be known as a concert venue, so they don't really want it to go into theater, which is fine. I think that it works really well because it's a very one room contained kind of story for only three characters, whereas Alice in Wonderland had 18 actors in it, so it's just apples and oranges, honestly.
And what I loved about it was during your speech, you said that the majority of the Alice in Wonderland cast was all female focus, and
It,
how
yeah, it was.
on this
We
last
had to
one.
change it a little bit and split it up a little bit more because it was kind of a lot on the ear, and also we had to move some pretty heavy sets, and there was a lot of every person except for like Alice and the Mad Hatter and the Queen of Hearts played other roles, so they had to be able to it had to track through a number of characters, so it kind of depended on what the characters were that we had. So yeah, but yeah.
I find it really interesting that you're into very much projects about women I don't want to call it women dominance, but I was reading on the email grant on or maybe it was on your website that the future is female or
Mm-hmm.
something, and that you're very into the fact that women are not being presented well enough. What do you have to say about that, especially right now with today's atmosphere, social atmosphere? And what is the importance that women become a more dominant figure? Because you seem to be doing that through your projects.
Well, I mean, I guess right what you know, right? So I'm just drawn to stories that are about women, and I don't feel like they're
You don't think that they're being misrepresented, or do you think they are?
mine in my stories.
Mhm.
No, no, I don't. I think that they're just stories, and there just happens to be a strong female protagonist, and I think because it's sort of hard. I feel like Hollywood's really trying to make some like strong female characters, but it's sort of like strong female character, and there's sort of a wide range about what determines someone being strong or not. But then there's some things like, in Yellowstone or something, and it seems to me like a
Yes.
caricature of a man writing a strong woman or something, and I'm just going,
Mhm.
what is going on here? Uh, so. And I think also, growing up, I didn't necessarily get into composing first because I didn't see any women doing it. I didn't know women could do it. Not, I mean, I was into singing, so it wasn't only that, but I just think it's important to have visibility. And I think, yeah, some of the stories I do are not a woman centered. There's like Dorian Gray, but most of them I would say are. I mean, I'm really interested in Amelia Earhart and her life, and Alice is obviously a female protagonist. Or even in The Monkey's Paw, I felt like when I wrote it, it was more about the point of view of the mother than anybody else. Um, Obviously, Yellow Wallpaper is female protagonist. So it just it sort of depends for me, but I do think um, I think you can, I also think you can have stories that are political without being political.
I
I
agree with
don't
that.
think you have to hit people over the head with what you're doing. I mean, I think that my stuff is inherently political because, like you said, there are a lot of strong female characters, but it doesn't really, I don't know. I think it's a really interesting question and it's a very nuanced answer, but I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of ways. Um, that's what I love about Alice in Wonderland. She is what was important to me, which I felt was sort of missing from the book, is that I wanted her to have some sort of transformation throughout it. So she wasn't just a two-dimensional kind of throwaway character, that she wanted things and those things are valid. And I think that those kinds of stories everybody is drawn to because whether it's a woman or a man, it's a universal feeling of being out of place or not fitting in or wanting home or wanting adventure. So I think it's a really interesting topic, and yeah, I think my stuff's inherently female centric, but I'm a woman, so
That's interesting that you mentioned about the point of view for Alice in Wonderland. Do you think that Alice is like intentionally, because because women are taught, especially during the time when the character was created, a young girl during her time would not be allowed to do what you're able to do now. And that is, it didn't occur to me. Do you think that she is free to build her own worlds as she's going through that transformation?
well, yeah, that's what I think the point is. She doesn't want to be stifled into Victorian society. She doesn't want to just, you know, learn math and get married and there's nothing wrong with either of those things. But Alice is kind of bucking the trend of the time, I think. And that's what's so interesting about that kind of a character.
Cool. So as what was the first thing that prompted you to compose? Like what was the spark that had you write your first piece?
I don't know. Um, I used to, well, I was kind of a brat. I mean, I would take piano lessons and I'd be playing Beethoven and Mozart and all that kind of stuff. And just, I would say it shouldn't go like that. It should go like this. And my teachers were horrified. I'm kind of horrified to admit it, to be honest. Um, and I just kind of went from there into thinking up other things. And I was always, growing up, I was always listening to classical or film scores. And I just started writing. I'll tell you how I got into actually thinking it was something I could do. I think it must have been like 12 or 13. Yeah, I was probably 12. Um, we read Hamlet in English class, and it was like a lot of essays and all of that really boring stuff. And they offered us, in lieu of an essay, to write a creative project of some kind. So basically, I took my Yamaha Clavinova. I was actually pretty technically good for 12. And we used to have like a disc, like the floppy disks
Oh
that
yes, I remember
went in, and you could record on them, and then you could hook it up to a boom box and put it onto a cassette tape. But anyway, so I wrote essentially a tone poem for Hamlet, or music that would accompany the scenes if it was a movie. And then I handed
that.
that in, and my teacher was just blown away. She said, whatever you're doing, you have to like focus on this and keep doing it. And then I realized that being creative could get me out of writing papers. So I started doing more of it.
That's interesting. I know as an English educator when I was teaching at the time, I never thought about that because I did something like that in high school. I'm sorry, you were 12 when you read Hamlet?
Hmm.
Wow. We didn't read Hamlet
Yeah, it
until
was a really stressful state. I lived in New York. It was extremely stressful growing
oh,
up there.
wow. I just remember reading Hamlet in 10th grade, I think was the pinnacle point of I had the best teacher on earth. And she really taught us like the roots of the English words and how you were able to break them down into their some and it's almost like breaking them down into like geometric circles. I'm sorry, into
Mm,
like geometric shapes where you build the words up into more than just one single meaning. But I remember doing something like that for Hamlet. I think I'm not even sure what kind of project it was, but she had us do I did, and unfortunately I lost my voice, but I made a recording of a ballad for Ophelia. So I want to
mm,
say that something like that was probably the musical point of that class, but I really enjoyed it. As a composer, when you are looking at stories that are in the public domain and the ones that you worked on, as an example, let's take for instance Dorian Gray,
mhm.
very dark, very mysterious, very gothic. Are there some famous or well-known music pieces that you immediately think, oh, this sounds like Dorian Gray, or this is the music that could be for this character in Dorian Gray, but not for this character? Are there like certain sources, like music sources that you will turn to kind of like, okay, I'm feeling it. Can it go this way or can it go that way? Like you mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark, you mentioned John O. Williams. For
Mhm.
anything for like adventure, you'll go to someone like John Williams. Or if you're looking for story, I mean, for me, as an example, I listened to Alan Menken. If you didn't know the story of Beauty and the Beast, all you had to do was listen to the music and you got it. I mean, it
Right, yeah.
literally told the
It's
story.
brilliant. He's brilliant. Yeah. Um, no, I don't. I guess my process isn't really like that. Yeah, I don't
Different,
really
but yeah.
think I don't really I'm breaking up again.
No. I'm just
Oh,
saying, like every composer approaches his or her own music in a different way. But like, what is your process? Like when you were doing Dorian Gray, for instance, what were some
right.
things that you were thinking about as a composer to really delve into the story as if it was being presented at that moment? And when you thought about how the story unfolded, were there certain famous music pieces that like you immediately thought about when you read that segment? Like, as an example, the scene where Dorian is suddenly he sees the portrait, and then I'm basing it off of the film, where he
Where it
sees
goes
where
into
it's
color.
black.
Yeah.
And what?
Where it goes into color from the black and white.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I actually don't, surprisingly, I don't think like that at all. How I do it is I usually kind of lock into some scene and I kind of think, how do I want it to sound? And I just sort of start experimenting with stuff. I don't really think, oh, what would I do here? What would I do here? Something usually draws me. The first thing I wrote for Dorian Gray was it's actually the overture, which is weird, but I kind of wanted this music boxy gothic thing. I don't know why, but I wrote that first. And then the next thing that really resonated with me was him making the deal with the portrait to stay young. And I just knew I wanted it to be kind of like a straight up aria. And yeah, and it just kind of tap into it. Yeah, I don't really think about other music, if that answers your question. I kind of just because there are people like my husband who are very regimented in how he works. For me, that's just not. I kind of go with what I'm drawn to. And then Sybil Vane's aria, I think was the next thing I wrote because I thought she's gonna kill herself. So it has to be this really kind of poignant thing. And then I think about things like it's in mine, it's going to be cold, it's going to be snowing. So I think of, okay, I want a bridge, I want stuff coming down. And then I kind of like visualize it and I go, okay, so it's going to have like celeste and some cold sounding instruments. And it's going to be maybe going between major and minor because it's sad, but it's also beautiful. And yeah, I kind of just mess around with stuff. And I usually when I know what's happening in the book, I can kind of sometimes I just kind of hear like a hook in my head with the words there, and I can just kind of like grab it and say, yeah, that's what I want. So yeah, it's more kind of abstract for me, and it's a little all over the place.
Okay. And there was something that you just mentioned about the celeste. For years, I mean, my favorite, you mentioned that you had a ballet book. Did you ever take up ballet by any chance?
Mm.
For like how many years?
Oh man, my parents threw me in that for a long time when I was a kid. I like did that from, I don't know, whatever the young little ones are till about 14 or so.
Okay. Um, my favorite as a child growing up, my favorite was always the Nutcracker.
Oh, yeah, it's
And
with hands down, that's one of my
yeah,
most favorite pieces of music.
yeah. So the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, I thought because I was brought up watching that along with the original Fantasia. So in
Hmm.
my head, the very first instrument that I clearly remember was the harp. I remember seeing, I was not even two. I remember it like it was yesterday. I recall the shape. I know what it sounded like. But for years, I thought that the music of the Sugar Plum Fairy was played on the harp. Until then, my dad pointed out, no, it's the celeste. Can you explain to our audiences what is the difference between a celeste versus a piano? For those that may not know, this is interesting.
A celeste is like a piano with a bell sound and it's higher.
Okay. And it usually it has like what? It has that little mallet that hits it.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Have you ever played on the celeste before?
No, I have a sample that does celeste, but my friend has a celeste, so yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think I have played a celeste.
Cool. So for your music studio, do you actually have like what do they call that? Like an Audi computer? I'm sorry. Not an Audi computer, an Audi keyboard that allows you to create the music that you want um for the score.
An Audi, like the car?
No, no, it's not. I'm not even sure. Not an Audi. something, it starts with an A. It's a type of, I've seen other composers use this. It's like, it's a keyboard, but it looks like a keyboard, like for the piano, and it's attached to their computer system.
Yeah,
And
that's what
then
I
they
have.
will, yeah,
It's a MIDI controller. I mean,
MIDI. Thank you. I'm sorry, MIDI controller. Sorry
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
it's a MIDI controller. It's
Yeah.
I used an 88 key. Most people don't, but I like it to feel like an actual piano. Um, and yeah, I have it hooked up to there's a lot of computers, they're all talking to each other. There's a lot of things going on. It's a lot of stuff.
So was there
Oh,
any, yeah, last question. Is there any book as a composer that is a must for today's composers to have as like the text? If you want to be a composer, this is the source. Or is it more based on the teachers that you have versus that?
it's probably the wrong one, but Joy Music, Leonard Bernstein's a pretty good. Anything by Bernstein's pretty good. You're not really
And
going to go wrong with him.
right, no, you can't. Definitely not.
Ah, I love
Well,
Lenny.
yeah. Well, Brooke, I wish you luck on your next project, and I wish you. I'm not sure if this will be the house you're going to be living in for a while. If you plan to move somewhere else, but I wish you the best. And if there's any other books that you want, let me know. I have a library full, so
Oh, thank you so much.
anyway, and I will keep you. I didn't mention this because I don't want to mention it publicly, but on one of my videos, I did mention that I was working on an opera project story. And since you're a composer, I would love to actually, once it's done, once I know where the story is, how it's going to end, and once I have that, I would actually like to get your input on that.
Amazing. Yeah, I would love to give
So,
you input on that.
all right.
That's
Anyway,
so
you have it.
cool.
Yeah, you have a great night, and
You
I
too.
will see you soon. Keep me informed of these next performances. All right.
Definitely will.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye
Okay.
bye. And take
Mm,
care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.